This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support, and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com. Now let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I am a writer for Fire Rescue One, a fire officer way up north in Wisconsin, and just darn happy to be here. I'm not alone today. With me is the editor-in-chief. I like to call her the commander. She's sporting a new look today. So if you're not watching us on YouTube, you should get over and see us over there because the commander, Janelle Fosquet, has... I like it. It's a very intellectual look. You look like you're feeling spry. How are we doing today, Janelle?
I'm doing great. I didn't realize putting on my glasses would change things so drastically, but the smart Janelle has shown up today.
Yeah. Well, we got to capitalize on getting people to the YouTube page, watching.
Oh yeah,
people, right?
Check out my glasses. Yeah, no, this is going to be a great show. I'm always fired up to have a fellow Bay Area native on the show. Love talking to my Bay Area people.
Yeah, you do get excited between San Diego and San Francisco. They are near and dear to your heart because with us today, we got a very special guest. We have San Francisco Fire Chief Dean Crispen, who was just sworn in as Fire Chief on January 21st, a little over a month ago. Still has that new chief smell to him, I think. So welcome, Chief. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
We talked a little bit about your journey to getting up to the fire chief position. You've been around in San Francisco. You started in 1990 at the age of 20. Now, if you are watching on video, he doesn't look like he's over 40. So doing the math, yeah, he started at a very early age as a firefighter EMT. And then and over the years, you've responded to more than 50 major incidents in San Francisco as IC, as firefighter. You've been in some of the biggest companies. You've really worked your way up through the ranks to get to where you are today. Did you ever think you would get here? And, now that you're here, are there things that you wished you would have done along the way?
Good question. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take you back a little bit into my high school experience. So I think a lot of firefighters probably have the same experience where we're all kind of trying to figure it out in high school. I wasn't the greatest student, but I had this one teacher pull me out of the classroom and he took me in the hallway and I said, "Hey, what am I in trouble for?" He was a math teacher and he said, "Actually, you know what? You're pretty good at this." And I thought to myself, wow. His name was Mike Silvestri. And I'll never forget, he showed faith in me and kind of let me know that I had a talent at something that I didn't think I had. And so when I graduated high school, I kind of wanted to do something different than my father. My father did 30 years in the fire department. He was a captain of arson, very well regarded, an amazing career. But I want to do something different than him. I don't know. I thought that was my calling, was to be an accountant. So I was going to school, studying accounting. I was going to work for a big six accounting firm, and that was going to be my path. And then my father said, "Hey, if you play your cards right, you can maybe do both. That could be kind of like your side gig." And a lot of firefighters at the time, because firefighters didn't make very much, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do like a little gig on the side, And so I ended up getting. Went to take the test. At the time, it was kind of just based on how you scored as whether you're going to get hired. And I did really well. I was lucky. And then I was hired. And I can honestly say this, every station that I worked in was my favorite station to work in because I really found a way to kind of buy into what that station had to offer and the people that I worked with. And even as I promoted, I was like, oh, this is the greatest job in the world. I don't ever want to do anything else. But just as responsibilities grow and I felt myself with a little bit more to offer, I was able to move up the ranks. And then I didn't realize it, but the people in the higher positions were kind of grooming me for this. They were giving me more and more responsibilities. They had me create tests. We created new documents that the department had never created before. We had a truck academy that we had never done before. And they were giving me all this responsibility. I still never thought the chief of department was something within my reach, but kind of at the timing that it happened with an opening here, it was good timing for me. I had 33 years, 34 years in the department. I was kind of ready to retire. But I still felt like I had more to give. I'm 55, but I feel like a little bit younger than that. And I think the fact I was in the field for so long, I kind of can really relate with end users in our department because I've had those touches right up to a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my journey up through the ranks. I always tried to stay at the busiest houses. And I used to tell my wife, she used to say, "You're crazy. Why do you work there?" And I said, "Well, it's actually safer." And she couldn't believe me. And I tried to explain to her, these people that work there are like so dedicated that they will come get you in a hazardous situation. I trust them 100%. They're into training, they're into the job, and not that anybody else wouldn't, but I just felt extra protected amongst my peers in these stations. We're all in it for the right reasons. We're all working hard. So that's kind of was my journey. And again, this opportunity presented kind of at the perfect time for me. Building a team has been fun and interesting, and that's kind of where we're going with it.
First, you mentioned that you were kind of groomed and you didn't really know it necessarily, right? And go into that a little bit. Were there chiefs along the way, or were there lieutenants that just said, "Hey, this guy gets it," or they just trusted you?
Yeah, this job is interesting in a lot of ways. One of the interesting things is you're always faced with challenges. You're always learning. So I think sometimes you forget how much you know. So for me, first of all, when I started at 20 years old, we had a big hiring gap. So almost everybody I worked with was like 20 years older than me. So I really felt like they took me under their wing and saw myself and my group of peers as like the next generation that they could pass the torch to in this department. So I felt like we got a lot of extra care from those folks to kind of, they felt that they wanted us to know as much as we could about the fire department, know as much about life. I mean, these people were like fathers to me. I had a great father, but they also talked to me about investing, about being a father, about being a husband, about all these other things that were super valuable. And then kind of as I progressed through my career, I didn't take my first lieutenant's test till I had maybe 10 years in, and I didn't get promoted till I had 18 years in.
Okay.
So I think in my journey, one thing I may have tried to promote a little bit earlier if I had it to do over again. I have 34 years now. I plan on staying for quite a while, but I never did this job for the money. I mean, my first paycheck was $889, and I thought I died and went to heaven. I really did, because I've always seen this as a service job. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Aaron and Janelle, most people made money in other ways to get by. They had, some kind of other thing that they could do because the fire department didn't pay very well. And I had accepted that as my path and kind of just saw myself as being a firefighter for my entire career. And then as promotional opportunities came, I took them and then enjoyed the process. And then this final opportunity presented, and it was, a lot of people motivated me to take it. I was kind of not to take the job, but to even push myself into that position, just because, again, I don't think sometimes as individuals, you're aware of the influence you can have and how good you can be at a job. Sometimes you need to hear it from other people, like, "Hey, you'd be the best person for this job."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Really? Oh, wow." And then you kind of, you interview and you see people listening to what you have to say and finding value in it. And then you kind of build your own confidence in that level. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Well, we talked a little bit about being a black cloud. I call it a crap magnet, right? You get thrown in some pretty bad calls and some bad situations. And you've had quite a few in your career. Do you think that helped people kind of believe in you a little bit more, or did it help with your own self-confidence?
So I had a very, I would say like a critical moment I had about 3 years in, and I went to a really big fire south of Market, which is kind of our warehouse district at the time. It was kind of dilapidated and empty at the time. And I was on the hose line, and just from our history, if you're on the engine and the squad person tries to come and take the hose line from you, you're not supposed to give it up. It was kind of an ego thing. And I had like 2 or 3 years in, and I kind of refused to give it up. Although I was like, all right, maybe I should give it to this person who's a lot older than me and more experienced. But I had it beaten into my head that you never give up your hose line, and I didn't. And it was interesting because although the person was kind of upset with me at the time, when we went back to the station, they were like, wow, that was really cool for a person your age to kind of understand our history and what our traditions are and what our mantra is as far as what you're supposed to do, what you aren't supposed to do. So I think at an early age, I was able to kind of earn people's respect by an understanding of the customs of San Francisco firefighting. Um, so I have been a magnet in a certain way. And I think it's helped me because at every stage, you're building confidence for yourself, but you're also, and as you become a chief, you're, and especially nowadays, it's there for everybody to see whether you perform well or you don't. And I've had some really big incidents as a chief where I think I've done a pretty good job. Some very specific fires that we've had where people are like, wow, you, we thought you were going to lose a whole block and we didn't. And it's thanks to you. And I'm like, no, it's thanks to everybody. I did happen to be out front giving direction, but everybody had to work collaboratively for that result to happen. But you're right. Some people seem to get more crazy incidents than others. It is true. But over the life of your career, if you work in the busiest stations, you're going to see some crazy stuff, have some dangerous moments. And that's just the way it is. I always put myself in those busy stations and I don't regret it.
What's the busiest station you worked at in San Francisco?
So, Station 3, Engine 3 is the busiest engine in the country. And I worked there for 13 years on the engine and the truck there. So, it's just nonstop calls. Up until I want to say 98, there were no sprinklers required. So when Gavin Newsom was a supervisor, he put in a sprinkler requirement for all SRO single room occupancies. And that changed the game of firefighting because the mattress fire that we get now used to be greater alarms. I mean, it's done a lot of good for the communities, but it has reduced the size and mass of the fires. And our firefighting has changed dramatically. So when I started in the fire department, almost all the fires started from either kitchen fires or somebody smoking in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it would start from the inside out. Now we're seeing fires from the outside in. Starts in a tent, extends to the exterior of the building, up the walls, and then into the building. So that isn't stopped as easily from a sprinkler or a smoke detector to alert people. They're getting a head start on us before we even have a chance to get water in the fire. So that's kind of been a big change for us. And we've had to kind of change a lot of our tactics due to that kind of what we're presented, the situation.
Yeah. Well, fire's changed the last, I've been in 20 years and even from when I went through my first fire academy to, I went through a couple of them, but, obviously UL and their research and the different materials that we have within our structures. Now you have lithium ion batteries up to 60, 70 per household, I think and climbing, right? Like what else have you seen major changes? You said, fire going from the inside out, outside in, just in general, what are some of the other big changes you've seen, not only with San Francisco, but in the fire service?
Sure. And that's a great question. I mean, obviously the urban interface situation and the massive amount of fires that we're seeing in a urban interface sector. So, I mean, obviously the LA fires are a perfect example of that. I mean, the old timers used to tell us wood smoke will never hurt you, and so people would go to forest fires and it would be wood burning and leaves and things. And now you're going to these fires with the same type of carcinogens that are being put out in house fires because these fires are burning up homes. So I think, we're seeing such increased rates of cancer, particularly in our members that are deployed to these wildland fires because of that. And also the amount of wind and the massive storms and massive amounts of wind that we're facing. Obviously, LA is a perfect example of that, where I think I saw one of the chiefs say, we could have had X number of engines there, and with those kind of winds, without being able to get resources in the air, you're going to be in big trouble. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably been the biggest change. And as you mentioned, the lithium ion batteries, where they enter into thermal runaway, and we have people, unfortunately, that store them improperly or charge them improperly. And we're seeing a lot of fires from lithium ion batteries where they don't go out. You're putting water on it, it's just not extinguishing, and you're just frustrated. And it's kicking out a ton of toxins. So yeah, those are some of the changes.
Chief, did you respond to the Oakland Hills fire in
I
November
did, but
21?
I volunteered. My friend and I went over in his VW bug
Oh,
and
wow.
responded ourselves. And it was such chaos that we just went over there. We put a few fires out with garden hose, and then we also put a couple, shut off some gas, and did as much good as we could. But we weren't deployed officially.
Yeah. After what just happened in Los Angeles, I feel like everyone anywhere near in wildland urban interface areas rethinking their tactics or strategies. Have you had those conversations in San Francisco?
Oh my God, every day.
Yeah.
Every day. So everybody's talking about our water supply. Everybody's talking about because we do have urban interface areas in San Francisco, although, the climate is different here. And the amount of homes in that area, in those areas, are a lot less. It definitely is a topic, 100% on everybody's minds at this point. So I'm either getting an email or some kind of phone call about it just daily.
Have you added training that's more focused on WUI in recent years?
In recent years, yes. I mean, the thing about Los Angeles was that happened in the wintertime. We're used to forest fires being in the summer, and now we're facing that big episode of fires in, was it January? So we're definitely changing our training. We're keeping our members on standby longer into the winter. We're doing a lot more pre-fire planning in our urban interface areas. I think everybody is, and we're also, we have an amazing water supply system here. So we've been just kind of highlighting that to the residents and doing some high profile training as well.
Yeah. All part of the process of it. And you had mentioned though, the winds, I mean, there was like a blowtorch, right? Like you can't get birds in the air. There's not a lot you can do until you can, get ahead of it. I think Chief Fennessy was, who was a guest of the show and a friend of the show, I think was quoted as saying that. But talking about those natural disasters, what are some of the things that you guys are doing to prep? What are your biggest fears about all the different things that you guys experience there?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that because I've lived here for 55 years. And I've never heard of a tornado warning in San Francisco. And we had one a month and a half ago. It was like, wow, this is something we definitely would respond to well, but not something we discussed. So I think, due to climate change, we're experiencing these more violent weather events. In the wintertime, I'm a skier, and we used to get, 6 inches here, a foot there, these beautiful storms. Used to call it Tahoe cement. Now we're getting less storms and giant monstrous storms where it's just dumping a ton of rain and snow. And obviously with that is the increased rain and issues that we have in the city, wind events and things like that. So, we've really had to, it's good that we're so prepared for earthquakes in San Francisco because we're really good at activating a lot of people to go to work at once. So, we kind of have to modify our earthquake plan to a major storm or a tsunami or something other, a tornado, something that's weather related, that although it's a different event, it still requires the same type of structure. So what we decided to do in my administration, we just did it this morning, is every Monday morning, our entire command staff meets 7 o'clock. I know it's a lot to ask, but we all meet and we activate our fire department operations center. And we go around the room and we talk about, okay, here's the incident. What would everybody's initial roles and responsibilities be? And even the nuts and bolts, like how do we get on a Teams call? Where are we going to go? What if the roads are impassable? And we just kind of knock every little question out that we can amongst our team. And the next step is to transfer that all the way down. Now, these are things we've been doing, but, with these increased weather events, we realize that, anytime one of these things can happen, and it may not be an earthquake. So we need to be ready.
Yeah. Well, now you even have plane crashes.
Yeah, the plane crash situation, and it's kind of upsetting, but we have to learn from what's happened at other incidents. And although it's tragic, we try to use those as case studies to develop our policy and fine tune our policy. So every time we see something, and we're hyper aware, and obviously with Instagram, YouTube, and things, as soon as these incidents happen, there's somebody analyzing it and analyzing what was done properly, what wasn't done properly, how it happened. Now, some of that stuff is incorrect, obviously, but there definitely is some value for our department to take those case studies and develop our protocols based on those. So obviously with all these air incidents that have been happening, I've been in direct contact with our airport chief every day, and we've used some of those to kind of just fine tune our policy. And it, it gives us opportunity to have drills based on what happened in case studies. I've been here a month and a week, 5 weeks, and deputy chief operations and deputy chief administration, same amount of time as I've been here. Now they had a little more administrative experience than I did, but I think it's a chance for us as the shiny new toys to show our energy to the group that's been here, and for the people that have been here to share their expertise with us. So it's like been a really creative and helpful dialogue and it's some team building as well, but just everybody understand their roles and responsibilities, understand the technology, and it's gone really well so far.
Yeah, it's a proactive approach to these situations, and I think that's got to happen, more times than it is in a lot of departments. And then do you guys go through and do you construct, like you look at other scenarios that have gone on, other disasters, other incidences, and you said you use that as training for your current staff, and then from there that helps mold policy, and does that then transfer out into the field?
So historically, policies and documents have been stagnant documents. Now we're trying to make them living documents so that they can be updated as more information. I mean, we live in a dynamic environment in the fire service, as we spoke about earlier with lithium-ion battery fires and weather events. And, what was applicable 10 years ago may not be applicable now, or it may be hyper applicable. So we are using all our documents and protocols and kind of, reviewing them and making sure that they're up to date with the latest situation scenarios we may have and the latest equipment that we have.
Do your members have mobile access to policies, procedures, so as soon as they're updated, they can read them?
Well, we have computer terminals in the station, and most members now have access to our documents on their phone through an app called the Fire Bulletin. And we also have an amazing training website that we just got up and running that has all of our training on a website. So you can look up, hey, because we use these amazing ladders that are made out of wood. How do you throw the 50-foot ladder on a hill? And you can actually go on your phone. And what's great about it is I didn't have this when I became an officer. If you're working the next day and you're not working the day before, you can actually plan your drill at home using these apps that are available to you on your personal phone, and prepare your drill prior to even showing up to work. So that's very helpful. Before we had to just kind of, wing it.
Right. It's like bringing your playbook with you everywhere you go.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's nice.
Like you're more modern. You can always learn, right? You listen anywhere where you have access to your policies, you have access to training anywhere. So really, people don't have an excuse to try to get to improve, right? There's always you can always find a little bit of time on it.
I agree. I know whenever I went to a fire, every single time, I would think that I did a fantastic job, and then I would go home, and as the days crept by, I would second guess myself, and I would think, man, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better. And the one thing that I felt like I was successful at was having some humility and being able to share my mistakes. I mean, a lot of mistakes you make on the fire ground, nobody ever sees. You make a mistake and it could have been something horrible, but nobody ever saw it. And some people put that in their pocket. And that's the worst thing you can do, because I learned so much from sitting around the dinner table with the people at work telling me stories about near misses or something that happened, and being able to evaluate your own performance and manifest that in the improved performance of your subordinates or your equals is amazing. And that's something I always kind of prided myself on. Sometimes it's embarrassing. You did something that was you should have known with 20 years in the fire department, like, wow, that's a hot wire. Why did I touch it? Right. But you
Yeah.
did it. And now the next person won't do it because you told the story. So
Well,
I think
we are fire service, so maybe somebody will, but maybe not as hard, or they'll at least think twice about
yeah,
doing it, right? I mean, we all mess up. We always have to try to improve and to learn. And I know as a fire officer, there's a lot of stuff I always say, well, if I was chief, I would do things this way. Or if I was, chief, this is how I would run it. Now, I know in your 33 years coming up, give me a couple that you've said, I do it this way, and what's the reality now you're sitting in the seat?
you know, this might sound like an easy answer, but just about everything. When you get here, you have to reevaluate. And I did take some of my experience from the field to translate here, as far as the people that I saw fail in promotional positions as lieutenant, captain, battalion chief are the people that made assumptions as to whether something was functioning or not and came in and just tried to change it right away without any kind of evaluation period. I've seen people do that, and it sends a terrible message to the people that work for you. And also it's many times incorrect. And specifically in this job, there's consensus among people in the field that we are doing the lion's share of the work. We're obviously going to fires and doing these amazing things and, performing rescues and medicals and doing all these fantastic things. And I think you can lose touch with all the hard work that happens in the office setting. And it didn't take me long when I got here to realize there's some real heroes in this building, people that are grinding so hard. And their job is, most of them are to keep firefighters safe. For example, fire prevention. We always think about sprinklers and smoke detectors, but really, they save a lot of firefighters' lives by doing a good job inspecting buildings. So those are things like, until you come down here and start talking to the folks that do it, it's hard to show as much appreciation as they deserve. But once you get here and you analyze the work that people are doing, you really realize that people are putting a lot of effort into their jobs in these positions here.
Yeah, and now that you're there, what are your top priorities for the position?
So I have a lot of meetings with the chief of police. His name's Chief Scott, and he's been here quite a while. I'd say 4 years, 5 years, maybe even more. And we had a meeting after about 3 or 4 days. Really, I was in here, and because we have scheduled meetings with other departments heads, and I said, how do you have any advice for me? And he told me, just be true to your basic values. Don't ever give that up. And I thought that was good advice. And my true basic values are love for this city and wanting it to succeed and wanting it to do well and being a constant cheerleader for San Francisco, which has been tough over the pandemic and afterwards, and all the national media and everybody beating us up. It's tough, but I haven't given up on that. And it feels really good now that I feel we're moving in the proper trajectory, that I can say that with confidence and honesty. So my goal as a chief of department is to make our department super hyper connected with the folks that we serve. So there's a lot of ways that we do that. And I want our members to be attached. So for example, when we have issues in the community, say a fire or a medical call or MCIs, I want our captains to be the first point of contact for community members that have issues, because they're our boots on the ground. I think sometimes it's siloed a little bit in the past, where people feel they need to reach out to a deputy chief or something who may not be as aware of what's going on. San Francisco is very hyper local. We have district supervisors, and we have tight communities, a lot of community organizations, and people are very politically active, and they want and deserve access to their local police officer, their local firefighter. So, just broadly growing up, my father was in the fire department. He was my coach. He raised us. I mean, my mom and dad raised us in San Francisco. Almost all of my coaches were firefighters and police officers. So, I know the city is a difficult place in a lot of ways, just because of cost of living, but we're trying to encourage at least our entry level firefighters to have connections to the city, whether they grew up here, live in the immediate area of San Francisco, and have our members be connected to the city. We try to have functions here. We try to just let the public know that we are there for them. And not only are we firefighters, but we're pillars in the community in other ways. I think that's really important. And it does help that the city's in the right trajectory because people want to come back to the city, go to dinner, have parties, and participate more in city activities.
What do you think
Yeah.
are the biggest misconceptions about the city from the outside?
I think, our downtown has clearly struggled. And I think people see some of the areas that have had, the bad effects of the fentanyl crisis and think the whole city's like that. Um, and they don't realize that there's so many amazing parts of this city. I've traveled a little bit in the last couple of years. I was thinking about retiring, so I went to Europe and I saw these places that were amazing cities. But I still love San Francisco. I mean, it feels so great that you can go to the Mission District, you can go to Chinatown, and it's almost like going on vacation in the same day. You can go to these amazing places. People
And
speak
the
a
weather
different language.
changes from community to community too.
What's
Right?
that?
And the weather changes from
Well,
communities to community,
that's
right?
very true too. Yeah, 15 minutes away, you can have an 80-degree day, and like I was telling you earlier, I didn't see the sun my whole childhood. I grew up in the Sunset District. It was foggy as heck all summer, so I fought through that. Um, but yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception is it's, and even honestly amongst residents here, it's so easy to look down and focus on the problems on the street and not look up. When I went to Europe, I was looking at all this beautiful architecture there. And I realized we have a lot of that here, but I just, I almost feel like I need to take the red bus around San Francisco sometimes and see all the cool stuff we have here because you get so hyper focused on all the things and the issues that you're dealing with. And I can totally see how tourists would see that. But I think having things be on the upswing, and I used to always tell people, wait till October. October is my favorite month in San Francisco. The Blue Angels fly. It's Fleet Week. October is the best weather. So now that 1 month or that look forward to that month is kind of happening year round, and people are really developing some positive energy. So I feel good at where the direction it's heading.
So cities heading in a good direction. It sounds like you're getting back to the basics of what really the fire service was created for, was protecting the community, connecting with the community. Um, what are the big kind of focuses you have then to help kind of enrich that community involvement? I know you've been involved with DEI. I know you've been involved with a lot of other programs within the department. Kind of describe kind of what your thought is and vision for that.
So let me explain my DEI experience. So my mother's from Nicaragua, and my grandmother raised her in the Mission District, which is primarily a Spanish-speaking area. My mother lived in Nicaragua till she was 12, and my grandmother was an incredible community activist in the mission. And she formed a group called LANSCA, that's basically a Latin American Senior Citizen Association, where she took folks that came here from primarily Central America that were non-English speaking and gave them a community center where they could feel welcome and speak their language with their community members. And honestly, she ended up going on a bunch of trips with them, which was pretty cool because she'd take 30 senior citizens to Hawaii. I don't know how she managed that, but she was amazing. And she always, she kind of instilled that community service mantra in my brother and my sister and I. And we used to take the Muni bus down to go help her feed the homeless in the Mission because we grew up in the Sunset District. And we complained the whole ride down because we were just young kids and wanted to go play with our friends. But the ride back on the bus was like the best ride ever because we all just felt so good about, what we had done and just being really proud of our grandmother. So I think I kind of had that understanding of the struggles that people have that don't speak English specifically in San Francisco and throughout the country. And so I joined the DEI group, and our job was to create a racial equity action document. And what we did is we took every process in the fire department and kind of evaluated and decided, okay, some of these things may not seem like there's biases in them, but they could be perceived as there are biases. And if there are, how can we fix it so that people feel that they have really fair access to everything? And we took everything down to, assignments to a specialized company and how people are selected for those, all the way from the large things from promotion and entry level hiring. And we took them and we broke them down. And I think we did a really good job of creating this document that made everybody feel like they had access to the same thing that everybody else did. And at its core, to me, that's how I see DEI. Like I see it as at a granular level, like a captain that's a captain in the mission district, which has a lot of Spanish speaking folks, should seek people that speak Spanish to be on their company for operational purposes and also for equality. We should really represent the people that we serve. And the same goes for any other neighborhood where you have people from different backgrounds. They should feel more comfortable. And the same as goes with policing, where they feel more comfortable with the officer or firefighter that looks like them, speaks like them. I think that's really important, and it makes our job more effective.
Yeah. You have a very basic approach, right? And I don't mean that in any derogatory. Like, hey, this job is difficult. Let's not make it more difficult, right? Like, even with DEI, we have certain areas where we need people of different representations, obviously, like Spanish speaking. Let's try to recruit within those areas. And same thing, like you talked about, getting back to the basics with the department, connecting with the community, being a cheerleader for your organization, being a cheerleader for your team. Are these things that your dad taught you, or where did you pick up on these concepts and along your path?
So, yeah, first of all, my dad had kind of an interesting path in the fire department. He grew up in the Fillmore district, which was mostly African Americans. And a lot of his friends in the department were black folks. And he had a way of reaching out to everybody and treating them equally that like I've never met a more anti-racist person in my life. And, not only did he treat everybody really fairly, but he would take you on if you said something that he didn't like that was derogatory about somebody else, which I thought was really courageous. And it cost him, at the time when he was in the department, it cost him kind of being in the in crowd in the department in a certain way, because he would take people on if he made a comment that he didn't like. And I think I really learned that from him. He also used to tell me, don't be a sheep, because it's easy in a big organization to kind of just follow the path of everybody else. And he didn't. He chose his fire prevention, fire investigation career. That's not what I chose. I chose to stay in the field for the lion's share of my career, but I also chose his same path of giving everybody a fair chance and treating everybody equally. And, I don't think I'm as good at it as he was, but being that person that would take people on if they were showing signs that they had issues along those lines.
Great mentorship there, right? Like, how cool is that to now transfer to what you're doing now, right? Like every single day, I'm sure you probably see the usefulness of that leadership that he had.
Yeah. So I think, in some ways, DEI it's more effective if you have an operational to explain it to the members in the field. I think that if it has an operational objective to everybody, I think you get buy-in, just like as I was saying about having people really believe that you need to look like the community that you serve, and having that make you more effective in the field. People want to do a good job, and they will know that if the diversity will allow them to do a better job, they will buy in and not push back. I think that's one thing that we're focused on pushing for in our administration.
Right. Being diverse allows us to give better service.
Exactly.
Flat out, right?
Yeah.
Right. Flat out. And when you look at service, innovation is also part of providing service, right? Because we're in this data-driven age, we're in this technology-driven age. What innovative things do you see coming your way, or that you're using there in San Francisco?
It's a great question. So, cancer is the killer of so many firefighters. In San Francisco, we had an amazing, actually, it was my training officer, Tony Stefani, started the San Francisco Firefighters Cancer Prevention Association. And they've done an incredible work for us with allowing us testing, intervention, dietary assistance, all these amazing things, and treatment on demand for our members who happen to contract cancer. So that's been amazing. But really, a lot of the training we do, we burn pallets. We'd burn pallets, and even pallets, some of them have glues in them. So within the training component, you have to take a look at, are those some things that are possibly contributing to some of the issues that we have? So our thoughts for training are, why don't we use technology? San Francisco is the technology capital of the world.
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. We're looking into using more AI and other technological ways to train our members so we don't have to specifically put them in a dangerous situation to train. So that, and also, some other, we just had a conversation the other day about, keeping our members safe when you're driving. And some of it's a little bit of a carrot and some of it's a little bit of a stick. But, most of our apparatus have black boxes now, similar to airplanes, where some of the data, almost all the data that's happening when they're driving is being recorded. So having our members be aware that this technology is being used to record folks when you're driving will make people drive safer and make them understand that. I know it's a little bit of a big brother thing, but being aware that somebody's keeping an eye out will have people drive more cautiously. And, we definitely, in this tight of a city with all the changes in the streets and all the scooters, bicycles, pedestrians, other vehicles, muni, we're subject to possibly getting a lot of accidents. So any way we can reduce that, especially using technology, we're all in.
Do you have stuff with drones coming up too?
We're actually just now, the police have jumped out a little bit ahead of us on the drones, and they actually have them in their district stations. They're just installing them now. So we're kind of piggybacking with them, and we're just having a program where we're installing a drone on the roof of Station 18 in the Sunset District, which is clearly near the water. So we found that the drones at fires, we haven't really grasped the full possibilities of them, because our fires are not anything other than a wildland fire. It's kind of a quick operation, getting it up and having it be useful, and the information. We haven't really utilized that as well. But for surf rescues, cliff rescues, car accidents, some kind of drawn out incident where we can't get immediate access with cameras, we see that as an amazing technology that we want to move forward with. And working in conjunction with the PD is going to be amazing.
Yeah. Chief, I've tried to get you, I've tried to get your blood pressure above 120. You're just calm, like cool. Like I'm going for DEI. I'm going for innovation. I'm trying all these different questions. Like, you are just a calm, cool guy. What gets you charged up? Like, what gets your blood pressure above 120?
Say something bad about San Francisco.
All right. I like that. I don't like the 49ers. How about that?
Oh my God. Okay. I'm coming through the screen now.
Yeah. Right. You are that calm person. Have you been told that? I mean, do people radiate to that, or, or am I the only one to kind of pick on you about it?
No, I think I'm fairly calm. I get fired up about when people do something really amazing in this job. I get super emotional about it. And it's not when I do it, it's when somebody else does it. And some of the people that came in this job before me, specifically, that are no longer with us, and I think about some of the deeds and some of the acts specifically that they helped me with, but the city as a whole and their love for this town, and some of the actions I've seen them take at fires were incredible. I mean, I had one incident where I probably had 5 years in, and we had a fire, and it was in a showroom. So it was a 5-story building. The whole 3rd floor was on fire. I mean, I'm talking about 3,000 square feet of fire. And we were ordered to go above the fire, and we went and searched, and literally the room went from as clear as you and I are speaking right now to black where we couldn't see anything in like half a second, it felt like. And I panicked. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought for sure it was over with. And I just felt this person grab my arm. His name is Gary Montague. And he grabbed my arm and he said, we're going back to where we came from. And as we went back there, we realized that in these showrooms, they used to have these big curtains that would drop, and they were steel. It was a smoke curtain, and it blocked our exit. And I'll tell you what, I was sucking that bottle down pretty quickly. But Lieutenant Montague never breathed hard at all. And he just remained calm, and he held on to my arm the whole time. And he pulled me to this stairwell, and we went down, and I just couldn't believe the competence that he displayed, and his care for me. I mean, I know we travel in teams, but I was a basket case. I was in trouble, and he definitely saved me that day. And his calm in certain ways translated to me, not as much as I would have liked, but it taught me a lesson. you know, when you're the senior person, that person that's with you, you're responsible for their life. And he was willing to do that. And, you know, I get excited thinking about some of those things that I've experienced.
Mm-hmm. You know, when you reflect on, let's say that one day you retire and you reflect on your term as being chief, how will you rate your successes? I mean, what kind of things are you looking for that will define success for you?
Well, I mean, we're going to have ideally the opportunity to do a fair amount of hiring in the next 2 years. You know, we have a class, we have 54 in a class right now. We have another class for 54 scheduled for early July. And then we have budgeted for 2 classes the following year. That's 200 firefighters that are going to come in kind of under our administration. And I think seeing the fruits of their labor, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to live in San Francisco the rest of my life. And I don't intend to go anywhere else. Seeing the fruits of my labor on the streets and the performance that these new firefighters have with our improved training programs, with our use of technology and innovation, with our apparatus that's keeping them safe, with the way that everything ties in. And honestly, a lot of it with the way we perform medical services, caring for the people that need it the most, providing community paramedicine for folks that, you know, some of them can't take care of themselves. And watching this city just move forward with a big part of the lift being from the fire department members that we have brought into this department. And also seeing our members that leave have a longer life. Because there's nothing worse than a person retiring and having a year in finding out they have cancer and then we're going to a funeral. So if we can help protect the health and life of people that are in the close to retiring and our retirees, and ensure that our people coming in buy into our history and traditions. It's very important to us to respect those, but also be welcome to changes that in some ways you have to protect people from themselves, because people want to work a lot sometimes. And you have to say, okay, maybe working a lot isn't the best thing for you. So maybe we have to put some limits on that some way. And, you know, while you may not feel good about, hey, overtime is being reduced, you know, sometimes people need a break. And we have really hard workers. And when there's a problem, they want to solve it. But sometimes the next person up has to solve it. So seeing those firefighters come in and have productive, healthy careers, and seeing our retirees retire and have long, healthy retirements is going to be feel really good for me.
Yeah. Well, and this is a joke we always tell in our firehouses is that, you know, you guys are going to pick me up off the floor in my underwear someday. So you want to make sure you train them well and make sure that they're good characters, right? Am I right on it with that one, Chief?
No, you're right on. I tell my kids that too, though. They better be ready. I did it for them.
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're gonna get in scooter accidents with your little scooter at that point. Probably, you're right.
Probably.
They're gonna have to pick you up and do it with grace. And I think that's a great way to judge, you know, a legacy of, you know, and your terms as chief is what does the organization look like? What kind of people do you bring in and what do they stand for? So, you know, very well said. We appreciate the insights. I think I got your blood pressure at about 122, and you're right. It's when you were talking about San Francisco, when you're talking about your people. So appreciate your insights and your passion for your community, Chief. And I'm sure it's going to be contagious within your organization. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your insights, but you're not done yet. We still have hot seat questions. Janelle loves these, especially when they're Bay Area or you know, California based. So she gets to start.
Bring it.
So I'm actually going to mix it up a little bit because we already talked about a couple of our go-to questions. So, all right, Chief, I know you love San Francisco and you're never leaving, but imagine a world in which you had to leave. Where would you want to serve as chief? You've done some traveling, so you've seen some other cities. If you had to pick another place, where would you serve as chief?
It would have to be FDNY. I mean, you probably get that answer from a lot of chiefs. But when we went back for 9/11, I'll never forget something that I saw, and it was complete chaos on the pile. And nobody really knew who we were. We were just 11 people in a uniform that weren't from New York. And we walked up to this group, and somebody grabbed us and said, "Hey, be quiet. The chief's about to say something." And he was a battalion chief, and he stood up on the pile, kind of like, I don't know if you remember what President Bush did, but it was kind of similar in that way. And he gave this kind of instructional to everybody about what the hazards were, what our goal was, what time, how long we were going to be there, what the safety factors were. And he spoke so clearly to his crews. It really impressed me with the respect that they had for their chief officer there. And watching the firefighters there just take in the information, and then it was almost like break, and they just went and worked so hard, and seeing the life that they had, even amongst all that tragedy that they had been faced with, it gave me a lot of respect. And we ended up going to a lot of funerals there after 9/11, because unfortunately there was no honor guard because most of the people were gone. So we filled in as the honor guard, and just seeing their history and traditions. And I mean, it did warm my heart, the appreciation that the citizens had for them. We have that here, but obviously it was hyper focused at right after 9/11. But a lot of respect for FDNY.
Yeah, the history there too. I mean, you walk around their training grounds. I had an opportunity to speak at their training ground last year, and it's highlighted my career just to see, just the pride and in their organization and what they do. So I would have to second that answer there, Chief. Well said. I love asking this question because the firehouse and the fire service is the means for a lot of shenanigans, a lot of fun. Pranks, and stories, of course. So what's one of the wildest stories that you can share that you will always remember that has happened to you or that you were part of in the fire service?
The wildest story. Let's see. The whole thing's been kind of wild. When the big fire in Santa Rosa happened, we kind of had some friends that called us and said that there were no fire engines in their neighborhood. So we kind of just same thing. We kind of went up there and helped out as much as we could. And this one kind of legendary firefighter named TC, I'll give you his initials. He decided he was going to go put this fire out in his shorts and tennis shoes. he grabbed a hose line and started running towards this building like he was running into a fire. And we're like, "What are you doing? You don't have any of your safety equipment." But he was determined, and he actually got a little bit of water on the fire. We finally had to pull him out, but it just showed me, like, when there's a task to be completed, sometimes people just kind of forget about, hey, usually have a helmet on or not tennis shoes, or, he just was ready to go. So I always remember that. It's just kind of like showing the aggression that people can take, and the love for this job, and the desire to help people even without regard for their own safety.
Yeah. You mentioned that too. Like sometimes we're our own worst enemy, because we will go above and beyond and try to do whatever we can to finish and complete that task to help someone else, but right at our own sacrifice sometimes. So,
Sure.
I think you also nailed that point, early on in our discussion, and really the whole thing, right? A lot of the points that you shared with us were all about, you throughout your career have always worked at how can you get better? What things can you do? Constantly evaluating fires you've been on, talking to people, being a mentor, getting mentored. It all comes back to, the theme of the show, which is, better every shift. And so the final question I have to ask is, what are you doing to get better?
I think in this job, knowing my blind spots is helping me get better. So I think when you're in the field, you feel like you're really good at what you do. And although you are hit with surprises sometimes, you kind of feel like you're at the top of your game when there's a fire. And I always felt like that. Like if there's a fire, I'm the person that I want to go and put it out. In this job, I realized that I'm not the best person in every department and that works for me. So there's very many other areas this department that are blind spots for me. I never worked at the airport. I never worked in community paramedicine. I never was a fire prevention. The goal is to get the best people managing those areas and have the trust in them to manage it without micromanaging something that they understand a lot better than you. So that's kind of been what I've tried to do so far. And that's kind of my goal moving forward, is to open myself up more to that instead of trying to be authoritarian and telling people, hey, you need to do this. Like taking more input from people, because in the field, when you get to be a chief, there's a hierarchy, and although you take some input from people, like your decision is the final say in many cases. Here, I think I have to be more collaborative. I have to take the viewpoints of others as equal to mine or even greater than mine and say, hey, my initial perception of this was wrong. This person coming in as a subject matter expert, I need to listen to them. And it's overarching sometimes on what my initial attitude or decision was.
Very well said. I wrote that down. I love that. Know your blind spots. I think that's part about being, humble too, which we had talked about earlier. That's how you learn. Admit your mistakes, be humble, and all that comes back to being able to serve the community better, right? And I think was your very first statement as you came on, is that you're happy to be San Francisco chief because you are San Francisco. You've been there your entire life. You're not going anywhere. They're going to have to pick you up off the floor in your underwear. So that ensures that you're going to have really good employees going forward and keep that mindset going to the rest of your department. So Chief, I think San Francisco's in good hands. Excited to see, all the different things that you come up with there and hear all the good things from the department. So thanks for your time. Congratulations, by the way. You still have that new chief smell. It's only a month in, but I mean, you sound like you have a really good grasp on things, and we just appreciate your time and supporting the mission of getting better.
I did go to my first fire as a chief, and I had my brand new white coat on, and I saw a few of my friends, and the first thing they did was wipe their dirty gloves all over me. It looked like I had been there for a little while, and I didn't say much, but I went home and I saw it, and I appreciated it. Thank you, folks.
Yeah. Have you washed it? Just keep that one, right? Just keep that one in the back of the closet, right? Yeah. That was your first kind of, test there, but right. But that's, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, I know what's going to happen, because that's the same thing I would do, right? Like, and you would 100%. Do the same thing. You probably did that to someone else too, right? And that's what we love about the fire service.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks again. We appreciate the time, appreciate the insights. If you like what you're hearing here on the Better Every Shift podcast, I've mentioned a couple of times, make sure you go over to our YouTube channel. You can watch all of our episodes. If you have some questions for myself or for Chief Crispen, we can relay them on to him. bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. We also want you to rate, review the show, and share this with your crew and or your department, someone that you think can benefit from it. But again, Chief, thanks for all the insights. I think you had some really, really great points that we all should take. I mean, first and foremost, be a cheerleader for your organization. Try to connect with your public. And I really love what you said about knowing your blind spots. The job is so diverse. The job has become a lot more complex, and there's so many things to know. And you really need to be humble. You need to realize when you don't know something, and knowing your blind spots was a great way to finish this up and a great lesson for all of us to take. Because in this job, in this profession, we mentioned it so many times before, but it's really the essence of what we're trying to do here is to learn something, do something, share something, and move something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.